Whether you're in a big city or a small town, you've likely noticed the increasing popularity of e-bikes. The convenience and availability of battery-operated electric motor-assisted transportation has opened up new options for people around the world. According to an article originally published in Sustainable Transport magazine, e-bikes make up about 15% of the market for all electric vehicles globally. This increasing popularity has changed the traditional transportation landscape. E-bikes fill an unoccupied space, acting like traditional bikes, but with enough range to replace vehicle trips. A 2025 report from the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy advocates for governments to take action to harness the economic, climate, and mobility benefits of e-bikes. To do so, governments need to consider things like e-bike parking and charging infrastructure. How will e-bikes share transportation networks designed for more traditional vehicle choices, and how to take advantage of opportunities that are presented by these new technologies? We're exploring new technologies in transportation on this episode of AE Live.
Coming to you on the internet, audio, on my stem, homies know AE's where you gotta go. Shuffle to the rhythm of the Graeme and Michael groove. It's a whole new pure plur interview. Treat your ears to the gist of careers from the list of our engineers and scientists, maybe twisted up with technologists. It's a podcast, baby, and not to be missed. Got more fly than a ripe banana, like the salmon caught the stamina streaming across Canada. Like a trade show cabana, got that swiggity swag and the 411 for my horse and my anchor. AE Live, don't you know we're gonna innovate? AE Live, got a topic here to elevate. AE Live, here to entertain and educate. AE Live, oh! AE Live, don't you know we're gonna innovate? AE Live, got a topic here to elevate. AE Live, here to entertain and educate. AE Live, oh!
This podcast was recorded in Vancouver on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. In Canada, researchers at the University of British Columbia found that e-bike use on off-street paths has increased from 5% of users in 2019 to over 16% in 2024. The increasing use of e-bikes and other motorized devices like e-scooters and self-balancing unicycles has led to an increase in the average speed of travelers on multi-use paths. This poses new challenges for transportation planners, as pedestrians and riders can feel less safe with the increased traffic and speeds observed along these pathways. Joining me today to share her insights on transportation planning, new technologies, and what it's like to support communities grappling with these new challenges is Breanna Jackson, an engineer with Associated Engineering. Breanna, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the most recent news. You were recently named by the Institute of Transportation Engineers as one of ITE's 2025 Young Leaders to Follow. In recognition of your, impact on the transportation field, what does that recognition mean to you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely honored to be recognized by ITE. It's an organization that I've been part of since I started my career, and so both working at Associated for as long as I have and being a part of ITE just kind of worked together to kind of give me an outlet for my passion of transportation engineering. So being a young leader to follow, it just shows that I'm on the right path and there's a lot more to do, but being recognized now for the work I've done so far is just really, really great.
Right. They did make note of your long history of participation in the organization, including way back to your time at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. Tell me what got you involved in the beginning.
Way back when I was at UBC, I think any opportunity to find a group of like-minded students was always something people looked for, and there was a few student groups I was in. I wouldn't say I was super involved in ITE at that stage, but I was getting more into the transportation side of civil engineering, and so going to those events, it gave me more of a opportunity to see what people were doing in the field and the students that were already starting to research transportation engineering or work in transportation engineering. It was just kind of that first look behind the curtain as a peer group for stuff that I was interested in.
Right. Tell me a bit more about that time at UBC and I guess how, how as a student in engineering, you kind of fell into the transportation field and maybe what other options you had considered.
Oh gosh, I know way back when I knew I wanted to be an engineer. Honestly, as long as I can remember. My uncle was an engineer, my grandfather was an engineer, so it was always, that was the path. But I think first I started at UBC in Vancouver thinking I wanted to be a computer engineer and started getting into that and realized that was not what I wanted to do at all. So not knowing what my specialty was, I saw an opportunity to go to UBC Okanagan and Kelowna and have a bit of a smaller university, smaller community. So I went there thinking I would just do civil engineering, get a civil engineering job. And then I had a couple transportation engineering courses. I got a summer student term at the City of Calgary in their transportation group, and it was like a light bulb clicked. It was all of a sudden I knew what was right for me and what I wanted to do, and it was transportation. So I started taking all the courses and joined ITE and just kind of leaned into that interest and that passion that I really felt as I started getting more involved. Yeah.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense given in the awards announcement. They called you an emerging force in the transportation industry. You've talked a bit about, I guess, what got you interested, but what is it that you bring to transportation projects then?
I think I bring a passion for what I do and also this want to connect with people. I think a lot of engineering, I mean, even why I originally got into it was I want to solve complex problems. We're big thinkers, we're problem solvers. I think any engineer feels that to some extent. But the more I got into the transportation side and the traffic side, the more I realized how much gray area there can be in transportation engineering. It's not, there's this code, this is the way it's designed, A plus B equals C. There's so many emotions that come into traffic engineering and transportation engineering, and it's things that everyone uses every day, and we as users don't really think about it until things aren't working well. And then there's a multitude of opinions and experiences, and I love that aspect, getting to connect with people, getting to understand where the different problems come from, and then at the end of the day, working to make things better for everyone. It's not just, I'm not here to move cars on a road. It's how do we move people? How do we help people get to where they need to go and move about the communities that we live in? So for me, it became this human focus thing that was not at the top of my brain when I started out with everything.
Right. I want to get more into I think that part of it and what you do with the projects, but maybe before we leave the university end of things, I thought it was really interesting what you're talking about people and how maybe the transportation was a bit different. We started our podcast series talking to Don Kennedy about his seismic engineering work, and that came off as very much a follow these rules. It has to be done this way to survive. But you're talking about a bit of a different side of engineering, and tell me, I guess, how you navigated that world as a student and picked the one you wanted, and kind of what that looks like as a young student.
So for me, UBC Okanagan gave a really unique opportunity where instead of some of the larger universities where you can specialize and get into the nitty gritty when you're there, UBCO was very broad level. You can graduate civil, mechanical, electrical. And from there, you have maybe a broader scope when you get out, and then you can specialize as you find your career. And I really liked that opportunity. Yes, I didn't get as in-depth in transportation courses when I was there because you had to take a little bit of everything. It definitely helped me learn what I didn't want to do and therefore what I did want to do. And like I said, at the end of it, I recognized I had an interest in transportation, but I had a civil engineering degree. I just wanted to learn and gain as much knowledge as I could. And it kind of opened the door for that because it was learning a little bit of everything and setting up that foundation to then find what you want to do from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So I guess a bit more into some of the work you've done since leaving school. You talked about being an advocate for integrating new technologies with traditional transportation networks. What does that look like?
This is thinking of things in our transportation realm, whether it be ITS solutions, like how do we incorporate technology into the transportation realm, and also how do we think of new modes of transportation. I think automated vehicles are something people are thinking about. Yes, I think that's on the horizon, but I mean, more of what we're dealing with the here and the now are in our communities. We're seeing people on e-bikes, people on scooters. Micromobility has come in pretty quickly into something that has historically with transportation maybe not changed that quickly. And so even when we're trying to figure out how do we best handle bikes sharing space with pedestrians, sharing space with cars, now we're also saying, oh, but there's bikes that actually go 30 kilometers an hour, and there's folks on scooters that are changing the game again, and there's no clear rules, which is we have some rules and then we're trying to change them and find a way to incorporate them. And so that's kind of where I say we're going away from these really strict standards. We know that there's really fundamental road laws that we need to follow, but we also know that we want to increase safety for all the users. And so how do we do that? And sometimes those new technologies are just being creative and thinking, how can we implement something that's not going to necessarily cost a lot of money, but we can try something out? And how can a community try something out and find something that works for them and just helps increase that safety and makes an experience better for all the users?
Right. Is that balance of cost of doing something, I think every community struggles with that and how to fund things, but does that changing over the course of your career? Have you noticed that?
We do a lot of work for the ministry, and so that's maybe a bit of a different realm. The smaller the communities have more of a challenge for sure with the kind of funding that they get. There's also a lot of opportunities out there for especially smaller communities to leverage grant opportunities and funding opportunities that they don't always know about. One of the recent ones was having a small community come to us and not even know the grants that were available for them to come up with an active transportation plan. So it was one of those things where they didn't even know what was available to them, and helping them access those grant opportunities. Sure, it helps us get a project, but it also then empowers them to say, oh, we don't have to fund this all on our own. There's stuff out there for us. And so it's definitely something that while small communities and municipalities in general are facing, there's creative ways that you can either lower costs on projects or you can find grant opportunities and things like that. So just about being creative and working with the organization, because each one's a bit different.
Sure. Let's dive a bit more into that. You've obviously done work with both large and small municipalities and clients of very different sizes. How has that changed? You talked a bit about helping a smaller community maybe find grant opportunities they didn't know about.
Yeah, getting to work with the smaller communities has been something that's been really fulfilling for me, and also feeling like I'm really helping to make a difference. The larger communities and organizations, obviously they're making strides on their own, but for me, seeing these small communities want to get into the space of, sure, we only have a population of a few thousand people, but that doesn't mean we don't want people to bike around our community and walk around our community. And in the past, it's just, oh, well, there's not that many people there. You guys will figure it out. But I see that changing, and I really enjoy trying to help them with that movement and that progression, and seeing how small communities can benefit from it. Sure, they don't need, a bi-directional bike lane running next to their main street like you would see in a larger city, but there's tools and there's treatments that can still benefit them. And even just having a plan so they know where to start can be so beneficial. And so that's really something that I'm quite passionate about is helping the small communities and advocating for them and helping them advocate for themselves as well.
Sure. Well, maybe let's dive into some actual specific examples if you want. I think that vision for a lot of people of this traditional small town is you've got your highway running through the city and cars passing through all the time, and you and then have people scattered everywhere around that. You're seeing that maybe how people are transporting and taking themselves around the town changing with different transportation options. That's what I'm hearing anyway.
E-bikes has changed the game for small community transportation. With that being said, just because someone has a bike that can assist with folks getting around, maybe speed up the commute slightly. It doesn't change the fact that, like you said, a lot of these communities are centered around a busy highway or a busy road, and everyone else is scattered around it. I had a project recently with a tiny community in southern BC, Christina Lake. They have a population of maybe 1,500 people, and then in the summer it's over 7,000. So in the summer they're a busy, bumbling place, and that's fantastic. But this highway goes right through the middle of the community, and it makes people feel really unsafe. It's kind of, instead of bringing the community together, it's cutting it in two. And there's a lot of safety implications that come with that when you take folks out of vehicles and say, I want to walk with my family down to the lake or to the ice cream store. And there's a highway with summer traffic running through it. Or in the winter, there's less summer traffic, less tourists, but the locals are dealing with large trucks moving through snow and slush. So these are huge dividing roads in the community where there is literally no other option to get them around. And so this is what I mean when I say it's so integral to find opportunities to help people walk and bike, because they're more likely to do it if they feel safe. And that's any of us. We're not going to make that trek if we don't feel safe walking next to a highway with, your family members next to you. It's just not a fun experience. So how do we really change that? And in Christina Lake, it was, how do we set up a vision and a project that can really help start making these changes and make it tangible for them. So it's bite-sized pieces. They can work on it slowly over time. Because like a big city, they don't have the funding. Even with grant applications, you can't do it all at once. So then how do you right-size it for them? And these things over time will help connect the network and just get more and more people out of their cars, walking and biking, and that just helps with this momentum that's already building within the people itself. They want that, so that's what we want to help them achieve.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So you've obviously done a wide variety of projects, studies, impact assessments, road improvements, recovery work. Take me through what, I guess, different projects look like and maybe some of the more rewarding aspects of the different things you've been involved in.
I like that I get to work on such a vast variety of projects, like anything from something small like Christina Lake, and that goes up to different kinds of projects. Like I was recently working on a project that helped with flood recovery for a small rural community where their one bridge in and out was basically damaged in the flood and they needed an option. So we're looking at different opportunities to maintain that connection through the community that would also have resilience to withstand future environmental factors. So you can see just the difference between those two projects, but also I get to work on large-scale projects like the never-ending Highway 1 widening project where I'm supporting with traffic. And so I think I do a little bit of everything. I know there's a lot of folks in our industry that feel like they're a jack of all trades and dabble in a lot of different things. I definitely fall into that category. I started in design and now I'm doing planning. So I really take part in projects anywhere from a long-term transportation planning to traffic studies to supporting on design to active transportation planning and design. So I do such a wide range that really keeps everything interesting and also helps me gain more insight to then apply to future projects and problems.
Right. Tell me a bit about what that looks like. You're involved in the design and planning of projects. You're consulting with a municipality on creating a plan for their future. Presumably you get to see less things get finished from a physical point of view. What's that like as an engineer when you probably imagined once upon a time that you'd be building things?
That's honestly been maybe the biggest challenge as a planner who's come from a design background. When I started my career, it was design, and then it gets installed in the field and I get to inspect it in the field, and then I get to check that box saying, yeah, I designed it, I saw it go in, day is made. And the longer term planning is definitely you don't get that gratification. You have to understand that you are helping with these visions and this momentum for communities, and there's value in that too. I know that down the line that's going to help them, and without these plans and without this support in the beginning, they're not going to get to that point down the line where they can install those things and where they can implement the visions. So you have to frame it in a way that's still fulfilling and understanding that you're supporting the communities.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things that comes up in a lot of my conversations with our different engineers is they went into it thinking it would be very technical, and have found some of the most rewarding things to be the relationships they've built. Given you're in planning with municipalities and communities, and these are longer term things where you're not building a physical structure, tell me a bit about the relationships you built, because that must be slightly different, I think, too, than what some people are experiencing.
Yeah, there's a lot more, not only relationship building with the clients and the organizations, but there's different projects that we get involved in the engagement. And yeah, maybe the project's not going to be built for 10 years, but we're engaging with the specific groups of people, or maybe it's the general public, it all depends, but engaging with the people now to say, is this something you're going to want in your community, or how can we make this better? And so I do get those relationships with the community members that come out and want to voice their opinions, and that makes me feel more connected to the project and the community. I work in a lot of places that I don't live, and so I'm not the expert from a livability local perspective. So the input from the locals and from the clients is so important. And you're right, having those strong relationships with the different folks is so critical. And just because something's not getting implemented right away doesn't mean that the relationships are any less key, I guess, is the big takeaway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Any particular ones that have been memorable for you, or?
Recently had a interesting engagement opportunity. This was for a project up in Whitehorse, where working for the government, and we had some engagement where the locals were very passionate and not necessarily happy with the way the project was unfolding. And so it's always that moment when you're engaging with people to kind of check your ego at the door and say, okay, I've done the technical work. This is the technical work. But at the end of the day, these are the people that live there. These are their emotions. And hearing even if it's coming from a place where they haven't studied transportation engineering, it's coming from a place of being passionate in their community. And so every word is still so important, whether that's yelling at you, yelling towards you, speaking really passionately about something that maybe it's oh, well, that's not the scope. That doesn't matter. I think there's so much benefit in just listening. And so sitting there, having those conversations, and just empathizing with them and sympathizing with them to say, yeah, this isn't in my backyard, but tell me how you feel about it. And I think the public often feels that they come to these things and, maybe nothing changes, but we do take these things away and look, and it's a combination of how do you feel in your community versus what is the technicalities of our project and how do we push forward with that. But I think hearing those voices is it's so important, even when they're loudly at you for a couple hours.
Sure, no, absolutely. So your work has taken you all over BC, Alberta, a bit up in northern Canada. Any communities that have stood out in your mind as just something you're glad your career has taken you to?
So I actually started associated in Lethbridge. So I think the work I did there and the people I got to make relationships with there will always be a place that I hold near and dear to my heart. It's a great city that just the way they're growing is so awesome to see. And so that's always one that is near and dear to me. I know I already talked about Christina Lake, but that community, wow. When I showed up there, I've never had such open arms extended. And by the end of my time observing in the community, I honestly felt like a friend or a family member. They were so welcoming, and that will always stand out in my mind as a community that I want to go back to and get to know those people even better.
Right. I guess the other factor in traveling is the environment itself. Climate change is something that Associated prioritizes with every project, really, to at least discuss that. What's your experience been dealing with, I guess, different ramifications of climate change in different communities across the country?
Definitely, it's something that comes into our work every day in terms of mode shift, where we want to get people out of their vehicles and onto transit or onto bikes or walking. These are I think, some of the biggest impacts we can have as both individuals and in our career for helping to reduce our footprints. And it not only does it have a great impact on the environment, the less we drive, but it has a lot of community benefits as well, which I think kind of keep tying in and help create positive change. But that's the biggest thing we need to think about is we can keep designing for roads and moving cars, and there's always going to be a place for that. And yes, we have electric vehicles, which is also an important opportunity to help reduce emissions. But at the end of the day, the cars on the road are the cars on the road, and in the more people you can move with public transportation and active transportation are the biggest game changers. And so I think that's why a lot of communities and government and policy is pushing that direction. And so it's something we obviously are excited to help support that change, because it's not only important for the environment, but it's important for community well-being as well.
Sure. Have you had to address the different way those communities will be impacted by climate change as far as the technology? I think making it possible to take electric cars around is a bigger thing in an urban location than in the far north, where the temperatures are going to make some of those things less feasible. Do you notice, I guess, changes in the way technology is being used, or what where do you go with those thoughts, I guess?
I think it's maybe hesitancy to adopt or lean into the different strategies. Like you said, in a northern climate, EVs may be more challenging. In a winter climate or a city or town where winter is taking up a large part of the year, that's where you hear biking's never going to work. It's winter, the maintenance of that. And so, yeah, I think those places are less likely to maybe jump on enthusiastically. And so it's about taking them along. And things have been done in other parts of the world that are ahead of where we are, and we can lean on those examples and look to what's being done in other places to help encourage maybe the hesitancy and the unsurety.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess the last area I think I wanted to explore with you is what you think that future outlook goes. Maybe not just the next couple of years, because you're planning for those already, but 10, 20, 30 years down the road, you've seen big changes already with e-bikes making a huge impact that maybe people didn't think of 10 years ago. Do you see more changes coming down the road, and other technologies that you think are going to impact things as we go forward?
I think totally change is going to keep happening. That's the way things go. I'm optimistic that it's going to keep with the expansion of active transportation. We're going to see more and more e-mobility and alternative mobility. Maybe not so much in the big city, but even in some of the more rural communities. BC has been piloting, looking at golf carts because they're electric, and maybe people aren't on their bikes, but if they're in that, then they're not in their vehicles, so it's still a step in that direction. I think autonomous vehicles are definitely going to have more of a part. That's slow going, but I think as policy changes, we're going to see more of that on the road. And so having systems that not only accommodate the systems, but can leverage the way those systems work. The more connected vehicles can be with the surrounding infrastructure and with each other, can help not only with the efficiency of roadways, but also the safety. I think safety is something that is being in the forefront for the last quite a few years, but even more so with more people getting out of their vehicles. moving safety forward, and what are technologies that we can start thinking about to improve the safety and increase the safety for whether it's people biking or walking or driving. And so I think that's another one that's going to definitely keep moving forward. It's interesting to see how things are moving forward. I mean, we also have challenges in Ontario. We were moving forward with great bike infrastructure, and maybe that's a little bit of a slowdown, but it'll continue again. And overall, I definitely think that there's all kinds of technologies that are going to be moving forward. And I think it's just options. It's giving people options that are comfortable and safe, and so they don't feel like they have to get in their car all the time. I think there's always going to be a place for that, but having the right place for that is going to be more and more critical as we move forward.
Right. All right. I think the last question I'll ask you is a bit just coming back to you personally and your commitment to kind of giving back to the industry that you've been a big part of. Volunteerism. What kind of things are you up to, and what is it that interests you as far as giving back to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, as I chatted about at the beginning, the Institute of Transportation Engineers is my group. I being so involved with them for so long, they are a great organization that helps better both the transportation engineering profession and also with a lot of the research and technology momentum that we see. They're an organization that is locally around all over Canada in sections and chapters. And then also at the Canadian level, they're the overarching organization that supports us at the international level. So they're a big group, which means they have a lot of power behind them for making things better and funding the different kinds of momentum that we want to see in our industry. And so I've been part of this section in Vancouver since I moved here, and I'm getting more and more involved at the Canadian level just because it is something that I'm really passionate about. And so I can just see my support for that increasing. I don't think I'm going anywhere with them, and I really appreciate my involvement both at that level but locally as well. Being able to host a space for like-minded peers to come together monthly and just chat about things that, whether, yes, it's about our profession, but it's also about making those connections. Once again, it comes back to people. It always comes back to people. And so that's why I really do love my involvement with IT and how that ties into both my career and my community at the end of the day.
Great. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sitting down and joining me today. If you don't have any final thoughts, we'll wrap it up there. And thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
That was Breanna Jackson, Transportation Planning Engineer with Associated Engineering. Breanna was recently recognized by the Institute of Transportation Engineers as one of the ITE's 2025 Young Leaders to Follow. This award acknowledges her contribution both to the ITE with many years of volunteer work and to communities across BC and Alberta. That's it for this episode of AE Live and our discussions on transportation planning and how new technology is changing the transportation landscape. I hope you'll join us again as we talk to Associated engineers and scientists about their work in communities across the country.
Coming to you on the internet audio, all my STEM homies know AE's where you gotta go. Shuffle to the rhythm of the Graeme Nix groove. It's a whole new pure plur interview. Treat your ears to the gist of careers from the list of our engineers and scientists, maybe twisted up with technologists. It's a podcast, baby, and not to be missed. Got more fly than a ripe banana, like the salmon caught the stamina streaming across Canada. Like a trade show cabana, got that swiggity swag and the 411 for my horse Niagara. AE Live, don't you know we're gonna innovate? AE Live, got a topic here to elevate. AE Live, here to entertain and educate. AE Live, oh! AE Live, don't you know we're gonna innovate? AE Live, got a topic here to